refer to the Gita's time when it is supposed to be a composition that took place when the Bhagavad Dharma was current in India, a theistic religion of which it seems to be the expression of some kind of foundation. But that is the only thing which is known and with some sort of authority. Whether it was directly connected with Bhagavad Dharma, it is difficult to be very definite, but that's the thesis. But apart from that, one knows that Gita is not a revealed scripture. And Gita is not a religion given by a kind of certainty about the Gita. Neither it is a philosophy written in the cell of the philosopher who has tried to raise the question of what am I, what is this world, what is the relation of world and man, or God and man, or between man, and so on. Those philosophical questions have not been raised philosophically in the Gita. It is, as I told you yesterday, addressed to a life situation in which somebody finds a conflict between values of life. And it is addressed to a warrior on the battlefield. So that those characteristics of Gita point to a sort of its applicability to modern world, in fact, you see. Because it also is at the same time a very, very Catholic synthesis of the three big tendencies, the knowledge, the action, and devotion, chief. And it also combines the Sankhya philosophy, the Raj Yogic outlook, and the Vedic, the people who are attached to sacrifice and so on. It takes up all the tendencies that are perhaps seen in the active field of spirituality in India and tries to synthesize them into a whole, into one in which all the tendencies find their complete fulfillment without mutual opposition. There is a reconciliation. And though Gita does not directly take up any philosophical problem on plane of metaphysics, yet from the practical side, it does take up, if not philosophical, at least certain psychological, aspects of the truth or man's life. Certain psychological basis of man's growth it takes up. For instance, it takes up the question of problem of sin, for instance. How is a man impelled to commit sin? You see? Now this is a problem which Gita puts and answers. So you can see this is in the third chapter of the Gita, third chapter, 36th verse, and in this 37th verse of the third chapter, the Krishna answers this proposition by saying that it is the desire element, the possessive tendency, the ego-driven movement of nature that is responsible, the impulse to possess, the impulse to enjoy, impulse to be angry. Well, kama yesha, krodha yesha. That is how it begins, the verse that is given in the Gita. So it tries to tap the origin in nature of man, the tendency to commit sin. And why do these tendencies offer resistance to control? Not only that they are their origin, but that they resist any effort of man to control them. So of that also Gita gives a sort of answer, that it is because the mind is allowed to be discursive and running about all objects, and is the origin is the sensation, really speaking. The resistibility and the recalcitrant nature of these impulses comes from the tendency of the sensation trying to govern the whole nature. Well, if the sensation is put in its proper place by mind, by intellect or intelligent will, and by reference to the soul, then the control becomes easy. You see, it is sensation which is allowed to rule the whole psychology, which makes the task of self-control very difficult. If control is to be exercised, then sensation must refer to the mind, and mind must refer its judgment to the intelligent will or intellect. And even intellect also should refer it to the soul for sanction. Well, then probably the problem of control would not be so difficult, as it is normally felt by men who are unconscious of the operation of the rajasic, means the active tendencies of nature, uh, based chiefly on desire and possessive tendency, on lust and on anger. Now that is one part of the Gita's teaching. The second, the more important part was, as we yesterday also said, I will repeat it again for confirming it, that it is a scripture which accepts life, in which renunciation doesn't find its place as an indispensable element of spiritual attainment. That spiritual attainment can be, secured by men or can be reached by men by accepting the groove of action, accepting the field of action. Works are not excluded from the scheme of spiritual perfection advocated by the Gita. That is one very great contribution of Gita to the world, in fact. And then, when you say acceptance of life, it is acceptance of life as a field for action of the divine in life. It is not merely man has to act, but man has to see that action or works become a field for, well, reaching the divine, and then when one has realized or experienced the divine, to bring the divine into life. So a double movement is allowed to the path of action, a movement in which works or action become a passage and a ladder to rise gradually, step by step, to the highest spiritual condition. And when one has reached it, the very same steps are used in order to bring the divine light and illumination and divine will into life. You see, that is a great service of Gita. And it is given this importance to action because it is very well known by experience that action makes more than three-fourths of man's life. And you cannot neglect three-fourths of the man's life from the scheme of spirituality. You see, action is there as a very important part of man's existence. And union with the divine, not only in withdrawal from action, but in the midst of works and action, is what the Gita advocates. When Gita knows that three-fourths of the man's life is action, it doesn't want to leave out that from the scheme of its perfection. But it also wants to convert this into a means for union with the divine. How to use three-fourths of man's activity into a means or an instrument, or how to convert it into an instrument so that man might use it for, well, uniting or cooperating or attaining union with the divine. And in this respect, Gita is quite contrary, opposed to the so-called Vedantic school of thought in which action is regarded as ignorance. You see, there is the school of Vedanta in which, so you see, action is regarded as binding, action is regarded as bondage, because all action must proceed out of ignorance. When you have knowledge, well, the only thing happens to you is you cease from action. That was the position. And Gita is directly taking up that position and taking up a diametrically opposite stand. It says that all action need not proceed out of ignorance. So, action was supposed to be ignorance at one time, and you see, because it was supposed that it binds you because you act out of desire. Now, Gita perfectly shows that it is possible to act without desire and not be bound by action. In fact, free and even divine action is possible. That is the thesis of the Gita. So, in this respect, it goes against a classical stand of some of the Vedantins of old school. And its argument is very strong when it puts this thesis. It says that nobody can avoid action even if he wants to. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarmakrit. Nothing that is born or nothing that exists can remain even for a moment without acting. And then it says, Sharira Yatra, even your very bodily existence cannot go on without action. See, it all goes to that. An argumentation, Gita gives this argument that body itself cannot be continued if Well, you don't act or don't work. So, in this great truth which Gita brings to the front, it is unique in the scriptures of India because the emphasis with which it brings out is quite unique. I mean, no other book gives that emphasis to the place of action in the scheme of the universe and in the scheme of man's life for spiritual life. In the Upanishad, you find action is allowed, action is permitted. But there the action is regarded as something which is a expression of your inner soul. And the insistence on action is not that which you find in the Gita. Gita says if one man withdraws from action, the cosmic energy and its movement are not affected at all. When it says, you say you will not act and you will withdraw from action, all right, you can withdraw. But that will not affect the cosmic movement, the energy that is at work and its flow. You see, and therefore that has a divine origin. Now, in this insistence of cosmic action and its place and its eternal activity, the vision of the mighty cosmic energy at work and insistence that in spiritual life this must find a place is something very unique in the scripture of the Gita, you see. And it says that even if you withdraw, this vast energy will go on working in mind and life and body. And how are you going to utilize that for your spiritual growth? I mean, that would be the problem, you see. And this, thus accepting action as a field, inevitable necessity of cosmic movement, and therefore the solution for man lies in finding out how to utilize this for his growth, the impulse to action, and gradually how to make it possible for the human being to resort to divine action, to make human actions divine. Well, that is the alchemy which Gita proposes to make by the process of karma yoga, which it proposes to as an integral part in which knowledge and devotion also will find their proper place. So, how to turn the human action into divine? Well, this is one of the greatest things that could be given to mankind under all conditions, because under all conditions man will have to act. And then how to see that the compulsion of machinery of nature, which is an ignorant acquiescence or ignorant obedience to the movement of universal nature, operating in what appears to us as inconscient or the lower layer of vital being and so on, how to make it so free from this entanglement of lower nature, and how to transfer the point of origin from the lower to the higher. That is the process which it suggests. It is not merely by believing in a God that this is done. That whole world has been believing, and people are never tired of telling it's the same thing, it's the same thing, it's the same thing. They always tell it same thing, but they don't know how to do the same thing. How the same thing is to be done. Then Gita or scriptures like that point out the way that here all action originates in the lower nature. In the desire is the driving force, and ego is the fulcrum or center of its activity. Now, how to transfer it from there to the higher center? Then the same human action can become divine action, you see. Now, this is a very important point, that the process or the method or the technique of transferring the origin of human action from the lower nature to the higher nature, and suppressing or removing or abolishing the egocentric outlook or egocentric movement of man, and making it either cosmic centric, universal centric, impersonal, or divine centric. You see, that is how it proposes to do that work. You see. Now, it makes also karma in one sense give a very great prominent place to karma, but it also take cognizance that karma must be done with knowledge. Karma is not to be done where all people do karma in that case. As I sometimes jocularly told, one of my friends used to say, I am doing karma yoga. I said, why? I am doing karma. Now, all action is not karma yoga unless it becomes a technique for transferring the desire and desire, as a driving force, removing that and putting something in its place, or suppression of the ego or removal of the ego. If the effort is not there, action is not karma yoga. Action is action. You see, karma yoga comes in when one observes his action and tries to suppress the individual initiation due to attraction, desire, attachment, ambition, greed, selfishness, or whatever it is, you see. And he tries to throw it out and substitute in its place, well, the will of the impersonal divine, or will of the cosmic divine, or will of the supreme divine. He tries to bring that into his, into his field of action. Now, therefore, Gita takes love and knowledge, bhakti and devotion or jnana, and joins it to the divine, to the action, to be done. And work becomes then either a service in the beginning, and ultimately work becomes a channel for canalizing the higher will into life. You see, a channel for the divine will to operate in life. And that would be the integral, indispensable yoga for the Gita, in the sense that it combines the knowledge aspect, the devotional aspect, and the active aspect into one, and makes it possible for the human individual to become a channel for the operation or flowing of the divine will into life. And the aspects which Gita develops during its outlook, see, I'm dealing first with this practical side, a little bit with a touch of its outlook only. That the whole yoga, when it begins on the plane of action, desire is noticed as the difficulty to be overcome. You see, desire is regarded, and Gita speaks of it as your greatest enemy. You see, Jahi Shatrum Mahabahu Kamarupam Durasadam. Enemy difficult to conquer, and it puts on desire. Now, when one replaces desire, it is to be done by gradation. The desires are not to be, desire is not to, at once the action does not become, desire, when you throw it out, the motive of action is lost. Normally, for a man, without any motive of satisfying desire, he is not impelled to act. So Gita proposes that first step you have the decision of doing action, but you become desireless so far as the result of action is concerned. So the desire is thrown out from attachment to the result of one's action, expectation of the fruit of what one is doing. What one decides to do is done at the highest point of one's consciousness. There's some element of desire may enter or can enter. It is possible that when one takes up a decision in ignorant nature, much of mixture will remain. But one does not decide by reference to his lower nature in deciding an action. This is an important point which is missed by many people. They think that, I have decided to act and now I am indifferent, or I have given up all desire for the result of the action. But the decision of doing an action must be taken at the highest point of one's consciousness. It must not be taken on the plane of attachment, or on the plane when one clearly notices the existence of desire. If desires are noticed as desire, well, the one thing is to reject and to act at the highest point of one's consciousness, not to act at the lowest point, but act at the highest. Some idea, some conception, some idea of religion, some idea of morality, some idea of an intellectual ideas, some principle, some motive which is not egoistic motive, not a motive of satisfying impulse or desire, but some motive to do right, to do duty, but some concept. One must rise to the highest point while deciding the nature of action if he wants to learn how to get rid of desires. The desires are perhaps there, But when you take up a decision for action as karma yoga, then you don't do an action in which you know that you have a desire. Well, that consciousness itself must make you reject that action and the decision. You must stand on the highest point of your consciousness and take the decision. Well, then Gita says that this action will be, because it is devoid of attachment to fruit of the desire or result of your desire, you will find that it will proceed on the basis of equanimity. It will proceed on the basis of a evenness of mind, untouched by success or failure, by a catastrophe or a good fortune coming to you, leaving you not only unaffected but completely untouched. That is the basis on which action will proceed in the Karma Yoga. An equanimity or equality of temperament, in which one feels completely detached from whatever happens as a result of action. If success comes, well, one is completely equal in temperament. If failure comes, one is completely detached and untouched in temperament. Well, that test is proposed as a foundation of the true action. And in this foundation of equality, one has to guard against semblance of equality, something that appears like equality but is not genuine equality, because this equality, when it is firmly established, will be founded on the basis of unity of consciousness or realization of oneness of consciousness everywhere. The presence of the infinite in oneself and in everything. It will be ultimately founded on that spiritual experience. The equality will not be mental or intellectual or only temperamental. It will not be an equality forced on nature by a pressure of will only. It can work a lot for a long time, but uh, genuine equality, firmly established in nature, will seek its basis in unity of all existence. You see? And that is what I was telling the other day. Who was telling me that the injunction in the Bible about, turning your right cheek when you are hit on the left is not an injunction of conduct. It is not a guide for action. It is only pointing to that truth inside that one who hits you is your own self. You see? In the last analysis, it's your own self that is hitting you. And when you realize that, well, you are in well founded. That is correct foundation. That is the foundation of the thing. He says that it is better to guard against semblances of equality, which are disappointed resignation. There are people who have got a disappointed resignation, an attitude of resignation due to disappointment. And it looks as if it was equanimity. It is not. You see, either disappointed resignation or equality of pride in everything that happens. There are people, inexperienced people with a hot temper. They say, "I don't care, nothing matters," or "It doesn't matter what happens." Now that I don't care is a result of a pride that is pumped into the nature. You see, even if something good happens, they don't care. Even if something bad happens, they don't care. Now, that is very often, in some cases at least, the result of pride. And it can be also complete indifference and not equanimity, which is quite different. Equality and indifference are not the same thing. One will be indifferent to a result and one will be equal minded to a result. They are not the same thing. When one is equality is attained, then one is in the know of what is what and how it acts. In indifference, one turns his back to all good, bad, and indifferent results without knowing what they are. Here in equanimity, you are conscious of the operation of forces, and yet you are so detached that no force comes and touches you in your station of complete detachment. Now, the step, as I told you, for Karma Yoga is renunciation of desire. That is the first step. And this has been insisted in the Gita several times, but renunciation of desire is not an outer renunciation but an inner rejection. An inner rejection of desire and of egoism. Now, constantly remembrance of means a constant watch on oneself while one acts, as to see the origin, you see, to see what prompts the action. Well, that brings the point of renunciation to the real origin, because this renunciation of which Gita speaks, renunciation of desire, is not one in which one renounces life or action. So renunciation of desire would require one the inner rejection of ego and desire both. It's not an outer renunciation of action or of field of life in which you find desire seems to be active whenever you take up that field of life. In that case, the remedy is not to give up the field of life. The remedy is to reject internally the drive of desire. And Gita, in several places, for instance, in the true definition of renunciation, when it says, in the 18th chapter, second verse, it says, to collect all the actions impelled by desire and put them away from you, that is real renunciation. That is one way in which it is put in. Or when you do an action, well, without depending upon, without expecting the result of your action. It is in the 6th chapter, you see, or first verse of the 6th chapter. Or for the matter of that, in the 4th chapter, 19th, it says, when a man acts having given up all attachment to the desire, to the results of his action, then he is not bound by action. You see? The binding force of karma or action comes when it is goaded by desire and also motivated by ego. The bondage is not in the action proper, and that is what brings to the prominence the idea of people who, after Buddhistic insistence on karma as the inexorable law of life. You see, in Buddhism, only this is accepted as an inexorable law. In Indian philosophy and Indian spirit of yoga and theosophy, metaphysics, karma is not regarded as an inexorable law. Karma is regarded as a machinery for growth. Karma is necessary for growth. Karma is not something that binds you. It binds you by desire, yes. That is to say, you are responsible for what happens to you. Karma's theory, if you take seriously, it comes to this, that an energy that is released at one point will evolve with a tendency to come back to the point of origin. That's all. This is almost like physical law, physics, law of physics. When an energy is released from one point of consciousness, the tendency will be for it to come back to the point of origin. Like a boomerang, it comes back to you. But you have the initiative, and you can stop it. It has not a binding force in the sense of coming irresistibly to you. It has not. In fact, the whole life, the functioning of collective life and social life contradicts this basis of karma. Because if that was true and admitted as true, then a thief could always say that he is impelled to commit theft because of his past karma, past action, is it not? And this explanation is not allowed by society to be valid. I mean, the society doesn't accept this at all. It says that whatever past factors may be there, we are not concerned with it. We are concerned with what you did to society or did to somebody in society. You see, it is not allowed. And I think it is rightly not allowed, because at each moment of choice in life, the individual is independent. If freedom was not allowed to the individual, he cannot be held responsible. And the choice that one exercises is a free choice. Therefore, you see, karma, when you do, Ishopnishad says clearly, na karma lipyate nare. No action binds the true man, the spirit of man, the Purusha. The Ishopnishad says, Upanishad doesn't grant that place to karma, which the later post-Buddhistic, ideas in India have granted to work or action. It is afterwards in the Upanishad, it's clear. Na karma lipyate nare. It doesn't bind the man. The true individual in man is not bound by karma. He is freely allowing a certain energy to be let upon a situation, that's all. And he's quite a free agent to decide, and nothing goes back to him. If he acts out of an impersonality, if he acts out of, desirelessness, if he acts in an egoless, impersonal status of consciousness, he may release a world energy and yet he may not be bound at all. So that all action in its nature, because it is action, is not a bondage. Action binds because of its attachment, which men have got, or desire, or ego, which one builds up with the action, and so on. Even there, the highest that one can say is that action creates in this man's nature a tendency. It doesn't create an inevitable drive, irresistible movement against which man has no chance of counteracting. And man has full chance of counteraction. You can say it is difficult for a man to counteract a tendency which he himself has created. Take a case of a man who has committed theft. If he has been committing theft for, you know, the first time it will not be very strong, but when he has committed dozen times, the tendency to commit theft becomes stronger and stronger, is it not? The more repeated and accepted the movement, the stronger it becomes. As I give sometimes the instance, it is like a thread. A small cotton thread, if you wind it 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, then it becomes a cord, isn't it? You wind round and round and round, and then you see it becomes a cord, it becomes very strong. The one you could have broken in no time, but when it becomes 100 or 200, then you have to exert a greater force, or you have to do the counter movement. If you have gone round in the right to left, you have to go from left to right again to unwind, so to say. But action means only this much, that a tendency will be created, or likelihood of tendency being created in your psychology, in one psychology. And that is, well, it will try to be a tendency, a tension in you, something that will want to be satisfied. But you are completely free to submit to it or to reject it. Well, that is where the individual, you see, if the individual is really from, let us take the metaphysical point of view. An omnipresent reality is the truth of the cosmos, is it not? That is our basis on which life divine is given to the world. Well, an omnipresent reality which takes up simultaneously three positions, or to us appears as if it is triple: individual, universal, and transcendental. Then in the individual, the omnipresent reality is there, isn't it? Now, at every moment when action is done, well, there is a chance for the omnipresent reality to come and decide. You understand the metaphysical position? Metaphysically, it is possible for that omnipresent reality in the individual to come and take decision. No action has a power against that. No action can go against the will of the omnipotent and omniscient reality which is at work. You see? Only man has to see how he can evoke that into, but unknown to him, it might come and counteract his activity, you see, or counteract the tendency. So, that is metaphysical stand. No, apart from all that, if we admit karma action as a binding force, man will be reduced to an automaton. And then automaton, he will become like a marionette moved by a machine. That karma has given him a spring, and now he is only unwinding the spring. Well, that would be really contradiction of the law of growth, the idea or the fact of responsibility, and also the possibility of a divine being intervening, because after all, karma is not what it appears to be. Karma is not outer form of action that you see. Karma really represents a psychological state. A karma, the same action can be moved by desire. The very same can be desireless. One action is founded on ego. The very same action can be egoless. Now, how can the mere fact of action or work be binding? If one has acted egolessly, the work cannot bind. So that from the outer form of action, it is not possible to decide whether it is binding or not, first. And secondly, law of action, if you give it the place of practically omnipotence, is it not? If there is no God, let us see, for the sake of argument, then law of action and reaction only operates, karma. Now then there is no escape out of it. It's like a mechanical law operating most mercilessly. It's not. I mean, it is working out like a machine. Well, the universe not being such a inconscient machine, law of action cannot be given that place so as to replace the omnipotence of the divine. You see, that divine is really speaking put into operation this law of karma only as a working process for the individual and collectivity to grow. That's all. The more you go on changing the origin of action, the more is the higher growth which one attains. Karma is for growth and also for the progress of life, means for pulling forward the individual and collective life in manifestation. Because if action ceases, then all the manifestation also will have, at least will cool down a lot. Is it not? Yeah, so action is something that keeps the thread of progress in the individual and collective life, well, going forward. And that is necessity also of that. That is they are the services which the law of karma fulfills. It admits the possibility of individual development. It admits also the progress of collective life. It also makes it possible for any divine element to come and manifest itself in life. That is the place of karma. Karma is a machinery for growth only, and not only a trick or a snare for binding. You see, that is the wrong idea of looking at karma. You see, it's not a snare for binding people to ignorance. Now, if so long as no, yes, it is the vital soul of desire that offers resistance to this renunciation of action. And therefore, one begins by doing desireless action, desireless in the sense of no attachment to the result of the action. You see, nishkama karma means work without any desire thrown into it. Well, desire in the sense of result of the action. That is the first step. And that one has done or succeeded in doing it is tested by foundation of equality in his temperament. The more and more equal his temper becomes, more detached and more unconcerned or untouched he remains in the midst of whatever action comes whatever result comes as a part of his action or as a result of his action, he is not touched. Well, that is a sign that the action was done without desire. The test being equality, not only not shaken but untouched. Because so long as one lives in the ego, in the I, and is driven by desire, it is not, man is not acting. Why Gita insists on this desirelessness is that man thinks, I am acting. I am responsible for what I am doing. He is not. It is nature is driving him. When a man is subjected to desire and ego, it is only nature that is working him and not himself. And this is a deception this is ignorance. You see, the play of ignorance is so easy and patent that nobody notices it. He says that renunciation of desire becomes necessary because so long as one is driven to act by desire and ego, he is not acting freely. He is acting under bondage, under pressure, under drive of cosmic nature, drive of, you call it nature if you like, you call it the flow of movement of consciousness that is operating in ignorance. He is not a free agent. I and the machinery which acts in desire is nature only and not the subject or I. That is most important thing because this freedom is illusory. One is already bound by nature when he acts in ignorance, by desire and ego. He is already bound. He may say, I am free, I do what I like, and so on. He is not doing what he likes, he is doing what nature makes him do. And this is not perceived by people, you see. People think that each desire that comes to the individual is his own. The desire that comes to the individual is not his own. And the desire is of the whole world, perhaps. Desire is universal. Man who wants money thinks that it is his desire. But millions want money, not one man. It's a property of mankind. Probably it's so general that to think that it is one's own is ignorance, I think. It is absolutely general. All the impulses under which man feels he is acting freely, independently, with a sense of responsibility are absolutely universal and common to all. No, it is not at all special or personal or individual at all, you see. And that shows that there is a common element which is making one do. And that common element is the pressure of nature, the drive of the nature is driving, and the freedom is illusory, really speaking. Bondage to nature is there, and it is nature that is doing everything. The only free will, Sri Aurobindo says in the Gita, is the divine will. That's the only free will. And the Gita also expresses that by saying, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Riddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. The Lord is seated in the heart of everything, all creatures, all things. You see, Bhuta is also the inanimate things, you see. He is seated in the heart of everything. What does it mean when he says Lord is seated? It means there is a total truth, you see. A truth is at work. And truth is working in nature, and something in the total truth determines the result. It is that total truth, the supreme aspect which determines the result, not individuals wanting an individual's desire or his ego. What does it mean when he says Lord is seated? It means there is a total truth, you see. A truth is at work. And truth is working in nature, and something in the total truth determines the result. It is that total truth, the supreme aspect which determines the result, not individuals wanting an individual's desire or his ego. The divine will, therefore, is not alien to man. It is already in man. Man has only to discover it. It is not some new, outside, separate, foreign will which one has to know when one is asked by scripture like Gita to act according to the divine will. It is not that he has to find somebody outside or that he has to obey some outer agency. When he is told that you must act according to the divine will, he is asked to act according to the highest self in him, because the divine is the highest self of each. The divine is not something foreign and outside, agency. It is not as if you have to go out of yourself and find somebody. When it says the Lord is seated in the heart of every creature, well, the point is to find it out. That's all. It is not somebody who is there, it is the highest self of each that is there. And it is the will of the highest self, which is the will of the divine in the individual. Divine, in fact, is the highest self of the individual. It is not our mental will, certainly. It's not our vital desire. That is the distinction one is to. It is not a mental will which you have to discover or a operation of vital desire, but an individual will which has become one with the divine will or cosmic will. Now, this problem therefore will be how to act without desire. If all the desires are thrown out, how to act without desire? Desireless action. There, Gita comes with its great discovery, you see, and one of the very exceptional, insight into the working of the inner life of man and the process of raising it to the highest truth. That when desire has been removed as a motive force in one's life for action, one acts because he knows that cosmic action is not stopping. That is what we saw when we started our talk this afternoon, this evening, that Arjuna is told by Krishna that nothing that is in the world can remain without action. Even your very bodily existence cannot continue without action. You see, breathing must go on, digestion must go on, circulation of blood must go on, heart must beat, and so on. Action must be there for life to continue. Even if you withdraw from action, the universal action is going on. Well, Gita says when you have this desirelessness in your action, the motive of doing action will be to offer the work as a sacrifice to the cosmic universal power or the divine power that is working in the universe. You offer it as a sacrifice to the divine will that is working in the universe. So that action becomes then a act of sacrifice, a desireless action which is given to the universal power for doing whatever it wants to do with that action. Action is put into the universal sacrificial fire. So to say, you put it in the fire, and whatever happens to it is not your individual concern, but it is the business of the cosmic being or cosmic force or divine presence to dispose of it, to do whatever it likes with it. Well, one does it for the sake of sacrifice, and this Gita puts it in the fourth chapter, 23rd verse. You see, Yagnaya charta karma samagram praviliyate. When a man acts for the sake of offering his works as a sacrifice, all his actions are then eliminated as binding force upon him. Afterward, they cease to be binding to him because they are done egolessly. And in this process, when he proceeds further in the process of making a conscious sacrifice, a stage comes when he realizes that his sense of being the actor, one who does desirous action also, is not wholly correct. He perceives that this sense of being the doer of action, one who originates action, one who does the action also, is only partial truth. He is only a, you can say, a kind of, well, channel or an instrument, but not the actor. He does not originate action. This he realizes when he does action for a sufficiently long time as a sacrifice. When he has done the practice of sacrificing action all the time to the universal or the divine supreme will working in the universe, he comes to realize that it is the universal will only that is working everywhere. Even under pretext of ignorance and even under the drive of desire, it is that which is working. Well, that perception makes him feel that the sense of being the doer is not quite right, that he is only an instrument of some will, some power, some intelligence, some will, some force, some vital force, or something that is working. And he is only opening himself as a channel to it to allow it to flow from himself. It's a it's a canalizing of the force rather than origination of action. Well, that is what he realizes when his sense of surrender, you see, comes. Then he completely is able to act up to the last injunction of Gita, surrender of all action to the divine. Well, is the highest, standard of action. Then he's able to make the true surrender. When the sense of being the actor, is substituted, and even the sense of being the instrument is completely, well, submerged into the identity with the Supreme Will or identity with the Supreme Himself. Well, then Gita has fulfilled the Karma Yoga into the height of Jnana Yoga, you see. It has taken the aspirant gradually and raised him to identity with the divine. And then the motive of continuing action after the identity is to serve the cosmic will in life or the divine will in life, so that it brings in the element of bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, you see. That is how Gita makes the synthesis complete. Where are we? Yes. Yes, it is a surrender of the impulse to act, is it not? Yes. Yeah. And the desirelessness is the first step. But Gita does not say that with desirelessness the action will go on only with an impersonality. When desirelessness is there, he will do the action as a sacrifice and feel more and more the active working of a cosmic will or a divine will. And when it actually succeeds in realizing its instrumentality to a higher agency, then he feels that there is only one power that is at work in the cosmos, a one universal being that is working, or universal force that is acting. And he comes to the not merely a concept or an idea, but to the realization of what is spoken of in the Upanishad as a Brahman. You see, an omnipresent reality, an infinite consciousness, being, and delight present in all. Desirelessness and equanimity of temperament or samatha will find its basis in an infinite reality present in all. It will be based upon the experience of an infinite reality, because Gita has declared more than once that by doing action alone, one realizes the highest infinite consciousness possible to realize by man. And when argument was put by Arjuna that, people, how can action lead to such a high state? Then he answered that only by doing action and using action as a fulcrum or as a means for growth, kings like Janaka and others attain the highest spiritual status. Karmanyevahi samsiddhim astita Janakadaya. Janaka and others like him resorted only to the path of action and to no other path, and still they attained, highest spiritual attainment or status. And the Gita here is pointing out that when one acts desirelessly and adds to it the element of offering the work as a sacrifice to the cosmic will or the divine will, he comes to the realization of the presence of one in all, which, well, indirectly brings the Upanishadic, realization into the karma, law of action, into the field of action. Because it makes the offering to the divine, which makes one realize the divine as our inmost self, and this inmost self can act with that equality. And this inmost self is, when it is realized, it means oneness is realized. It means one knows one's inmost self, and to act with equality is to act with the knowledge of the one. And it is the one that acts afterwards. You see? That is how Gita, well, takes the realization of the Upanishad and brings it down to the field of karma yoga, the practice of yoga of action. And therefore, naturally, when you say that you have to go on continuing action when you are liberated from pressure of desire, why do we act at all after desire? It points out that because you see that cosmic sacrifice is going on. Even when you withdraw your desire, even when you withdraw yourself from action completely, the cosmic sacrifice doesn't stop, it goes on. So you decide after desirelessness established in you to do the action as an offering to the cosmic will. Well, that leads you to a new conception of freedom or liberation, mukti, as they say in Indian terminology. What is the liberation? Before Gita, the idea of liberation was that you identify yourself completely with an infinite consciousness and merge the individual consciousness into the infinite consciousness. Well, that is liberation. The merging of the individual into the infinite, or of the human into the supreme. That is liberation. Or if Bhakti Yoga was there, the liberation consisted in, well, realizing the personality of the divine as the most beautiful, most lovable, and one in whose presence you live constantly. Well, that would be the Bhakti liberation. This karma liberation comes and says that you go on constantly acting, and the Brahmic consciousness, the infinite consciousness, is realized by you, and it is with this Brahmic consciousness that you act, so that you are free or liberated in action. You are not liberated from action, but you are liberated or free while you are doing the action. This brings a new idea of liberation completely, which is not at all, very much current in classical or traditional ideas of Indian yogic systems. The idea generally is that you withdraw from action or you completely are identified and then there is nothing to do. Whereas here in the Gita, well, the idea of liberation or mukti is surrender of one's will to the supreme will and carrying out of the divine will in one's life. Removing the obstacle of the ego and then making it possible for the eternal or the divine, who is all, who is cosmic also, to act in oneself. Now, this liberation is called, it is sadharma gati, means movement which is goaded by attaining the nature of the divine by oneself. It is not a liberation in which one is merging into the divine and nothing happens to his nature. Here, the nature rises to the divine plane from the human, because desire has been thrown out, ego has been completely eliminated, and yet action is allowed to happen not only as a sacrifice but as one that is goaded by, inspired by cosmic or supreme will or divine will. And therefore, action tends more and more to originate from the higher nature, from the divine nature. Well, then the liberation that one attains in karma yoga is the liberation in action. Another part of Gita's teaching is that it shows to Arjuna all along, because Arjuna is faced with the problem of killing his cousins, isn't it? Killing his own kinsmen. And that brings the idea of death to the front. And Gita emphatically, like all other Indian scriptures, but more emphatically because it is on a battlefield that this is given, that the soul is immortal. The self does not die, it is the body that dies. Man is not the body. That's how the corollary will go. You see, that when you say you will be killed or you will kill, well, this is a way of putting for yourself, but really the soul is not killed. The body dies, the soul does not die, and man is not the body. Now, this great truth the Gita puts in the very beginning of its teaching, and because the soul in man is eternal and it's only changes its body like a garment, as it says. At one of the verses of the Gita says, just as a man changes his garment, well, the soul changes its body, either mental body or vital body or physical body or all. And it insists on the practice of, well, the further part of Gita's yoga we take up tomorrow, perhaps. I think that's better, because there is yet plenty to be talked about. And I think we will stop here. There is danger of going to sleep. It's one of the highest scriptures that has been given to the world. Here or from Flagstaff?
From Flagstaff, Purani. We've been away for 3 days. No, from Tuesday.
There was something, a mystery, the last part of it, and I'd like to get it if you can remember what it was you said about sensation must be referred to will. And from, I don't have the rest
No,
of it.
sensation to mind.
Oh, sensation to
Mind. Mind to intellect or buddhi, and that must refer to the soul.
Oh, sensation must be referred to mind.
Mind. What happens now is that, you see, the mind is subjected to sensation.
Yeah.
Buddhi is subjected to mind, and no chance is given to the self to intervene. He says reverse the process. The sensation must refer to the mind must refer to intellect or intelligent will, and then intellect must refer to the soul or self, the Purusha consciousness, which we'll deal tomorrow. You see, we have dealt already in the psychological part of our exposition about Purusha and Prakriti, which Gita insists as a necessary practice for a Karma Yogin also. Gita insists on this practice of separation of self and nature part. And that must refer to the self, last, from buddhi to the self, for sanction, you see.
And
From intellect
or will.
yes, to the self, to the
And
Purusha,
then to the self.
self.
Disappointed equality.
No, disappointed resignation.
Yeah.
Resignation appears like equality, but it is not equality. What Gita is giving a notice that you should not mistake disappointed resignation for equality of temper. Equality is a positive thing because equality is founded on realization of one in all, while disappointed resignation is the result of reaction. Something when one doesn't succeed, well, he says, whatever happens, happens, I don't care. That is not equality.
No, indifferent.
Can take a one turn, equality itself can take a one turn because equality is not a one type. You see, equality has 3 or 4 methods of its working. It works as something in the intellect, or it can work in the will, it can work in the emotional being. Equality can be founded on action of one instrument. But the Gita refers to an equality which is founded in irrespective of all nature, you see, an independent status to be established in the self, based upon perception or experience of unity in all, oneness in all, the Brahman or the infinite in all.
You open on to a sort of a new dimension of consciousness
Yes.
where you are like an actor on a stage. You are involved in the role, but you are not. You don't feel the terrible weight of reality as you do in normal experience.
Well, the weight
You're
is
acting out.
feeling of weight is due to egoistic nature. The weight is due to what people or Gita calls ignorance. You see, weight is due to ignorance. Weight is due to thinking that one is doing when one is not free agent and he is not really doing. You see, he feels the weight of being carried, that's all. See, the stream is flowing fast and you are being carried into it, you feel all the impact of the flow. Naturally, he feels all the pressure of the flow. If you are on the bank, then flow can be as fast as it likes, but you are not carried.
That account for some of the great tasks that people do in utter self-sacrifice to humanity, where they do a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah. Yes, they open to some cosmic powers, cosmic forces, you see. And it is those forces that support them. They don't open all of them to divine or the higher nature, but to something that leads them to an impersonality gradually, you see. All public work is not divine work. Make it that as your point of thought, then you will understand. All work done for the public is not divine.
Depends on the motive.
However big public work may be, it is very often egoistic. 99.9 it is egoistic. Only it takes collective ego, therefore it appears as if it was something more than human ego, but it is egoistic and therefore it is not less binding, if you say binding. Yes. It binds with his sattva, as the Gita says, binds with sattvic nature. I am a good man, as I told you, like a moralist who always says and accounts good deeds and is always particular and tells God, please remember I am a good man, I am a very honest man, I never took any bribe, I only did public service and kept correct accounts. Please remember that I am honest and so on. So God says, yes, that all I remember. You get something with compound interest. You get something with compound interest, you get something, you don't know. Unrewarded, only you won't get the whole of the divine because the divine is above good and bad, and then you have to give yourself up completely. Cease to be a pious and holy man and a virtuous man and keep account of virtue all the time.
Yeah.
It's how it binds, you see.
Mhm.
The good actions, so called, become more binding on the man because he always feels a justification for them.
Mhm.
More. Because you see, a selfish man will immediately perceive his selfishness. But a man who believes that he is doing unselfish work, well, he find it very difficult to know that this is ignorant work.
Try that again. Good actions.
Sometimes more binding than small actions or bad actions. Because you can make the man see the bad point easily. You see, if a man is drunkard, you can make him see he's a fool. But if he's all the time, doing something for the public and thinking he's a wonderful man, now to make him feel that this is a bondage is very difficult.
Because there's ego.
The ego becomes justifiable ego, whereas the other ego is not justifiable because a man who commits a mistake immediately sees that this is wrong and he can at once be told and he will understand. But such a man will not understand that he says, I am right and this is power. I can't do, if I don't do anything, what will happen to the public?
That reminds me.
All the
I
time.
heard a man say one time, Purani, that it takes a good sinner to be a good saint.
Yes, yes. It's Anatole France who said that.
Was it?
Did I not give you that story here?
He said, I think.
I told you that story. Did I not tell you that it is in Crime de Sylvester Bonner, Crime of Sylvester Bonner. It is a story written by Anatole as usual. A terrible story, full of very fine language and very sharp wit and criticism. You see, sharp, clever way of humor, which if you don't get, it simply passes over one's head. But it's a wonderful humor if you can catch it, you see. You don't catch it at first, how sharp it is. You see, it's like a steel razor edge, and it has cut, and don't know how much it has cut. The Roman Catholics know it and never bind his books. The Catholic Church refused to bind books of Anatole France. If you give them for binding, because he is attacking Roman Catholic religion in his writing in such a drastic way that terrific. So, in that, yes, Crime of Sylvester Bonner. Crime of Sylvester Bonner. Crime de Sylvester. He is a member of Académie Française. You see, Paris Academy, Academy of French.
Is that Bonard?
Yes, Bonnard. Bonnard. Sylvester Bonnard. Life of Sylvester Bonnard. Anatole France. Oh, it's a very humorous book. All his books are like that, you see. All his books are like that. Penguin Islands is like that. It says it's a criticism on France. The whole French nation is laughed at. My God, what a laugh! Terrific fellow. Penguin Islands is taking island of the penguins, That is French people. And the way he writes about France. Les Penguinos, yes, L'île Penguinos in French. Penguin Islands. It's translated in English. Very fine. It says satire on France, but terrific satire. So this Sylvester Bonner is connected with some orphanage and all that and so on. But more important, there is a Greek preacher, you see, Greek priest. And this are a French priest who knows Greek and Latin. And he is teaching Greek and Latin to a young boy of a boulangerie, means a baker. You see, baker's son. He has a bakery, and the proprietor of the bakery is a young man, A young boy is going to the school and there he is weak in his classics. So this priest teaches him Greek and Latin, and in return, the boulangerie, the man who is running the bakery, feeds this man. He is not taking any money. He goes there and takes his meals there and teaches this boy. The boy then learns a lot of Greek and Latin, and he's very clever in Greek philosophy, this priest. And so the priest says to this boy very often sometimes that, you see, you know, my boy, in the highest sinner is contained the stuff of the highest saint. That's how it is. In the highest sinner is contained the stuff of the highest saint. Why, you know? Because repentance is in proportion to the enormity of the sin. In order to repent, you must repent, deeply, you must do something enormous, is it not? So the greater the sin that you perform, the greater is the repentance possible. Well, the greater the repentance, the greater the sainthood too will rise. And therefore, the conclusions are terrible. He can laugh at religion and make it ridiculous, particularly Roman Catholic religion. He can. He's retired from his service from Asia Minor and has gone back to Rome because Rome was ruling. You remember? Rome was the ruling power. When Christ was crucified, it was under a Roman governor called Pontiff Pilate. Yes, now that is the context. So Anatole is writing a story that Pontiff Pilate has finished his service in Palestine, in Asia Minor, and has now retired to Rome. He is in retirement. During his office in Rome, the rule was that if you are found, committing misdemeanor, as they called it, then you have to leave Italy, Roman territory, particular city of Roman Italy, and you're thrown out of the country. And generally, these people are thrown into Roman Empire, means went to Palestine or went to some other part of the Roman Empire. The Romans were found guilty of misdemeanors, something immoral or wrong or public, disapprobation. Then he was ordered to leave the country and get out. For 10 years, 12 years, you can't come back to Rome. Well, one of them was asked to go out like that. And he was in Asia Minor when Pontiff Pilate was there as governor. This Roman who was out. So this is now scene is in Rome. In Rome, this man is going about, this man who was driven out of Rome for his misdemeanor. And Pontiff Pilate is there, being borne on a palanquin, because in those days there was nothing else. So in a palanquin, he has got rheumatic pain and joint trouble. So he's going to take bath in the hot spring somewhere. And he's bringing. So he met, oh, you are Pontiff Pilate. Yes, I'm Pontiff Pilate. Oh, when did you come back? Then they are talking. Now that's the subject matter. You see, he says that, yes, I came back. And what happened? Yes, but you were there also? He said, yeah, I was there. I had to quit the country because, my trouble. And so I was there. And you know that there were these Jews are there? He said, yes. And then the Pontiff said, yes, they're terrible people. Then he says, but you see, there was a young man. And 21, 22, you remember? He said, yes, and what happened? And so many people were there, and these people, these Jews, they were quarreling about the religion so much that I don't remember exactly what happened. But he says, so many cases used to come about their interpretation of this and interpretation of that, and I don't remember. He said, no, but this young man, he was very peculiar, had a great influence, something like, power which you could exercise. And you see, and these Jews, my God, what type of dance they have, and the incense that they burn when they come together for religious purposes and so on. I used to attend most of these seances, and there was one lady, she was very, very fine. You see, and one day I asked after 2-3 months, where is she gone? She said, she has gone away. And then I found that this young man of 22, she was pursuing him and had left her dancing and everything on one side. Her name was Mary. Yeah, oh, I said, I don't remember that. That didn't come to me in the court. But, and you see, ultimately something happened, and then they charged him with, heresy. Oh, I see. Did they charge? Yes, they charged him with heresy, and then they crucified him. You allowed them to be him to be crucified under their law. You said that it is their law, and the Roman law will not apply. I remember. You remember his name? His name? Yes, I remember. Jesus Christ. Then Pontiff Pilate, Jesus Christ? I don't remember his name.
Don't remember it.
The way in which he puts the background of
Yeah.
Christ and how it must have looked to the Roman point of view and what place it must have occupied. Terrific
Yeah.
story. Wonderful story. Wonderful. Yes, you see, the Pontiff Pilate would not remember Jesus Christ, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
So he, after a long story, he said, "You remember his name?" I said, "No, I don't remember." He said, Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ? No, I don't recall. That is the procurator of Judea. It's a very fine story that way. Bernard Shaw, they have a great critical faculty. Voltaire, Bernard Shaw, Anatole France. They have great critical faculty. And great advantage is that they can break the wall of superstition, wrong belief or falsehood or half truth and so on. But constructive power or creative power, they have not. That is a misfortune. You see, they can't give you anything positive. They will break down everything that you like to believe, you see, to pieces. Anatole France or Bernard Shaw or Voltaire and so on, they're critical, destructive faculty. Good in the sense it destroys something not good or not correct or irrational, but also it doesn't supply anything positive for life. There are only two things they will say is desire and enjoyment. That's all, and that has not proved sufficient for man. That is the whole trouble with man. The only thing he insisted that these are the constant factors. Well, that is well known. Even the constant factor in the animals. Why man? It doesn't take man.
This karmic action, this action raises a great many thoughts in your mind because
Yes.
we associate karma with cause and effect and
Yeah.
action and reaction. Well, this raises this, if you think of it in its highest sense, it raises it above that, doesn't it?
No, it simplifies the complexity of the problem, in fact. The action and reaction is due to attachment and ego.
Yes.
So it says, cut the attachment. Well, you are clean and you are free.
Well, that's what I mean. It raises it to something altogether out of the realm of cause and effect.
Yes, exactly. And takes it into another realm where cause and effect become secondary, not important. Because cause and effect don't belong to you, belong to the cosmic and the supreme. What cause must produce what effect? Well, you leave it in the better hands.
Well, then, and by that very process, you are protected, aren't you? If it's raised to that level where you.
Yes. You are no bondage afterwards. You are not subject to reactions of attachment or egoism or in your psychology you get more free. You don't accumulate tendencies which will be binding on you, so to say, or will be acting on your tension.
Do you remember in the New Testament where the rich young ruler came to Christ and it says, particularly in St. John, that Christ and Jesus, looking on him, loved him. And evidently he he had an immediate attachment for this young man. And he said, go and sell all your possessions and come back to me. And the rich young man went away sorrowful. That's all it says. I don't know what he did, but there may be some connection there, you see, that Christ wanted to free, or Jesus wanted to free him from the bondage of desire. I don't know. I say it might.
It can be that interpretation can be possible. Yes, it's quite possible. And he was so attached that he didn't want to. That's all. He was so attached to it that he didn't want to give it up.
It doesn't sound like he did it.
Was he an American?
No, he was a Jew. Anyway, he might have been an Arab.
American.
Where did he do
He might have been an Arab.
I thought he was a Roman.
I think Nick is right.
Oh, dear.
It's Los Angeles or somewhere. Then I told one man who was very insistent, I have yet to meet an American who says, I have money. Of the past.
Are they?
Rajas are gone. Last 13 years now.
And were they taxed out of existence?
Huh?
Were they taxed out of existence?
Their whole property now belongs to India. They were allowed choice of retaining personal property. And then they found, some of them retained, then they found the maintenance charge is so high like the lords in England that some of them sold them away to other people, some of them handed over to public causes, and some of them told the government, please don't charge us, utilize for any putting your offices or anything. We don't want this white elephant at our door. So the Rajas are not in a good way. So they have some money, more than the farmers they have, certainly, because in one generation it doesn't last. But I think after 2 generations, the Raja's son will be found in the street and they will be like any commoner. And say, in fact, 3 or 4 of them have become commoners. One is serving in the military, somebody serving in another ministry, and so on. They are taking up jobs now.
But what about the caste system?
Caste system is already going. There is nothing much about the caste. It is much that is going away. It's not very strong. During my own lifetime, I mean, I have seen 30 years back what it was and what is now. There is a world of difference. Nobody cares much for the caste today. Who matters? There are people in the villages who still think, but even they feel now that caste is not, after all, something which you can't break. Even the villager now knows that. Because he knows that Nehru's sister is married to somebody who is not in his caste. You see the reason. Gandhi's son is married to somebody who was Madrasi. So, for him, the best leaders have broken the caste to pieces. So he says this can be done by good people. And that's good enough for him. That's how he thinks now. It's not that caste is good or bad for him, but he knows that the great people do it now. So it is not bad to do that. And so he is prepared to break the caste. Become practically interprovincial, not even caste. The question of even caste doesn't arise. Interprovinces. Bengali marrying Punjabi and Punjabi marrying somebody in Delhi and Delhi marrying Madras and so on. So that process is on.
And do women ever go into purdah?
There are women in the Punjab who have got the parda, very few now. Because Arya Samaj was there last 60 years and they have broken parda to pieces for the Hindu community. But Muslims have got parda. Muslims observe parda in some parts of Punjab and UP also. But in the Hindu community, parda was never there.
But don't you think that women are just beginning to emerge in India?
Women are very powerful. You have no
Yeah.
idea. Women have got the best benefit of freedom is to the women.
Yeah,
Best.
yeah. For so long, they didn't appear.
Now you see, in 4 or 5 provinces, they are in the ministry. They are ministers. Not only in the center, in Bombay government, in Madras government, in each government, there are 1 or 2 women who are ministers.
Mm. I
Well, they have
noticed
got-
too that women are Well, they have the job, they're working.
Yes,
You know, but they weren't doing when I was there in 1935.
yes.
They weren't doing.
Oh no, they've got very good position. Now the greatest benefit of freedom is this freedom of women. Greatest freedom.
The thing that was quite encouraging was so many women taking up the trade of doctor.
Yes, yes,
That seems to be very popular.
yes.
It's a women.
Typist, popular, bank work, oh, they're in every field of life.